And it might be that financially, in terms of trade, in terms of Trump would really like to put together a kind of economic package that binds countries together in the Middle East.
I'm as close to being, and this term is often used as a pejorative, I'm proud to hang my hat on it, a classical technical analysis as you can get. My pen case, man. It's like notepad, I got my ruler, I print stuff out, I draw lines with pencils, the whole shebang, man.
Hello and welcome to Pairs of Aces. I'm your host, Adam Lemon, and with me are my co-hosts, Huzefa Ahmed and Christopher Lewis. Hey guys, how you doing?
How you doing?
Good. So today we have three topics on the table. Number one, what is going on in Iran and how that might affect the stock market. Number two, we're going to talk about some of the recent US economic data, which was a little bit interesting. And then number three, which we're going to talk about for a bit longer, I think, how we trade. We want to talk about some of the trading strategy we use and how we do it. Hopefully that's going to be interesting for you. So stay tuned, listen in. Remember, you can subscribe to DailyForex's YouTube channel, and that way you won't miss a thing. And you can leave comments and questions. In fact, questions are even better than comments. So leave your questions in the YouTube comment section for this episode. If there's anything at all you want to ask us, and we promise we will answer it at the next episode. So without further ado, our first topic. It's been in the news. It's not a big surprise to anyone. To cut a long story short, President Trump was threatening that America was going to take some kind of military action against Iran. And it got to a head last night where some people thought it was imminent. The prediction market, looking at Polymarket, showed that people were expecting a U.S. strike on Iran by the middle of next week. More than 50% of respondents were expecting that. So that was priced in. Then last night, President Trump said, well, it seems like the killing has been damped down. There has been violence there. We don't know exactly what the casualty is or exactly what's been going on because the government has taken down the internet for several days. So you will get some grainy footage coming out from Iran, but nobody really knows, or nobody outside Iran really knows exactly what's been going on. Certainly the public doesn't. And then I think about an hour ago, President Trump said something which again seems to have moved sentiment against the prospect of an imminent US strike. And Polymarket is now showing it is not expected. It's still expected by the end of March and even more strongly by the end of June. Which kind of begs the question, why would America take some kind of military action or some kind of kinetic action against Iran? And what might it look like and what might it do to the market? This is really a lot of speculation because we just don't know. Of course, there was a conflict between Israel and Iran last summer, which America joined in on the last day and either destroyed or mostly destroyed some of Iran's nuclear facilities. So I guess the question to you guys is, number one, do you think anything's going to happen? Number two, if something does happen, what do you think is going to happen? Number three, what do you think that might mean for the markets? These are big questions that I don't have the answer to, and I think probably none of us really do because we just don't know. But it's certainly something anyone trading should probably be thinking of, because this is the kind of thing that could suddenly land on your screen and send prices a bit crazy. Although I would say if America does do anything or there is any kind of conflict, I believe it's quite likely to be at the weekend when markets are closed. That's actually something to think about. You might not want to be in any positions over the weekend if they're going to be sensitive to something like that, because you might find that when the market opens, it is far from where you want it to be. And that's no fun.
Long Lockheed Martin.
Yeah, that's no fun on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
So, Chris, I think you're a bit skeptical about all this. You don't really think anything's going to happen.
Actually, I'd like to hear Huzefa's take on it first as he leaves. Goodbye. Oh, no. Just because I'd be interested to hear the Canadian perspective first, because I don't know. I just would be.
Sure. Yeah. I've got a pseudo-Canadian, pseudo-Brit perspective. I watch the Canadian news. I read a lot. I read a lot of New York Times as well.
He's Greenlandic. He's
Yeah.
somewhere between the two.
Yeah. And then the BBC News. But okay, so from less US perspective, I could say, more Eurocentric, more Canadian. Firstly, I want to address on a human level how sad I feel about it. Government's reaction to civil disobedience, what's caused the unrest in Iran has been economic collapse. It means people are going hungry, people don't have electricity, people don't have jobs and security, and it's a mass. I don't remember if
It's
anyone wants
probably
to look up
worth
the
mentioning the Iranian currency has dropped to virtually nothing. Yeah.
And then war is never good. There are no real winners in wars, period. But war is so. I don't know how it will go. My sense is, I mean, this is an obvious statement. Nobody knows how it will go. My sense is that even the Trump administration do not particularly want to get in an entanglement with a country like Iran because it will be messy. And so if they can avoid it, there's been a lot of saber rattling over the years, over the decades even, but over the last few years. And somehow cooler heads have prevailed. And they've done the brinkmanship. They've made their points with rocket attacks, etc., and they've held the ground from a full-out war. That doesn't mean that it's not going to ever happen. It's always on the table. But my sense is that most parties that could do something about it don't want to do something about it. The Europeans are massively do not want to escalate this. They've got zero appetite for that. And I don't know to what degree that will enter the calculus of the Trump administration. But that is something that's one of the very few objective things I can say about the situation. About war in general and the markets, war is always inflationary, so you can put that into a calculus in terms of how it might affect interest rates. I think the stock market. I think the stock market's reaction will be stupidly muted given given how serious it is. I feel the stock market is just operating in its own sphere, its own set of rules.
It's not reality. It hasn't been reality for at least 15 years.
Yeah.
So why would it be now? You know,
exactly. So if somebody looked at the market, if somebody looked at a chart of the S&P 500 or a bunch of other indexes, they wouldn't be able to pull out global events, bar maybe if they had
COVID, maybe
COVID for 5-6 weeks in terms of the impact of the market, and the tariffs maybe 2 dips and an entire rebound. But you could just look at it as very temporary pullbacks without that context. There's nothing there. Oil is fascinating. I looked at the oil chart. I didn't trade oil very much, but I looked at the chart and it's bounced off a support. It's at lows. So if the calculus is a war, a military conflict with a country like Iran would squeeze oil prices, oil would go up. The chart is primed for that as well. It's broken a trend line. It's bounced off support. It's got plenty of upside room to go up. Those are my hot takes.
Interesting. So, yeah, you would see that technically the market is getting ready for a move to the upside.
Yeah.
I think it's very interesting that, Polymarket shows that the market is, or it seems to be showing the market is pricing in a conflict, within the next few weeks. That seems, I'm a bit surprised. I would have thought the numbers would be lower by now. And there's an interesting question there about, the wisdom of the crowd. Like a lot of people point towards, Nate Silver, the famous pollster. He said,
"Who got everything wrong last time?
Kamala's got it in the bag.
Horrifically wrong.
Kamala's got it in the bag." He was hired by Polymarket as an advisor. And of course, they've got to have, their odds have got to be based on reality to some extent. So presumably that's what he was going to do for them. But Polymarket correctly predicted that Trump would win the last election. That probably did for Polymarket a lot more than, most of its marketing, because, and that's a whole topic.
And the That and going back to the last episode, the questions about Taylor Swift having babies and the important hard-hitting news and facts like that.
The mix of high and low trading culture. Yeah,
Right.
it's a winner.
So for a U.S. Perspective on Iran, people have to understand that, and I say this who has somebody who has a 17-year-old son. There's zero chance he's going to Iran. I'll be in the Bahamas with him before that happens, and most Americans feel like that. There is going to be no boots on the ground in Iran, or if there are, they're not going to get conscripts. There's 500 million guns in this country, and there's a reason for it, and it's for things like that. I'm positive that the U.S. this would be like the whole situation with Vietnam. We have no interest in going into Iran, and it's not that Americans don't believe that the mullahs should be overran. We do, and most Americans. There are a lot of Iranians, most of which will call themselves Persians, that live in the U.S. and they're great people. I mean, they're just amazing people. Beverly Hills is full of them, and there is no accident that they are there. They are very resourceful people, and most Americans recognize that there is a huge difference between the government and the people.
Yeah.
So that being said, we would love to see the government toppled, but the reality is the United States has been at war in one form or another since 2001. And that's why there's no appetite to send U.S. troops to the Ukraine. It doesn't matter what's going on there because, and that's a point of contention between the Europeans. You mentioned something about the Europeans and whether there's any appetite for war with Iran. If the United States wants to go to war with Iran, they'll do it with or without Europe. I mean, I think that's obvious. But we won't send troops to Ukraine because whoever does that here politically, that party's done for decades. We've had too many wars. And the problem that we keep running into is there's an expression, sometimes you'll hear people use it now, weapons of mass destruction, meaning that you're going down a false rabbit hole.
Yeah.
We've had that problem here. My generation went to Iraq, and for what? For no reason whatsoever, really. And since then, it's come out that U.S. Ambassador to Kuwait told Saddam's people that we don't have any interest in regional disputes when they invaded Kuwait. So, like, the whole thing has been a disaster. Afghanistan, there was a point when U.S. troops were coming over to Afghanistan who had been born after the invasion of Afghanistan. That's insane. And we just left. So, like, I don't know what we accomplished. And that's how the population looks at this. So there won't be any major conflicts. Now, my take is he will bomb something, him being Trump. If you remember last time, he kind of walked it back a little bit right before he got with Bibi Netanyahu and they said, okay, let's do this. But he kind of walked it back. So I agree with Polymarket. I think something will happen. I don't think it's going to be enough to overthrow the government. That is something that, unfortunately, the Iranians themselves are going to have to do. I'm sure that the CIA and the Mossad and MI6 and everybody else is on the ground there in the middle of all this. I have no doubts about that. But it's going to have to be done within because there's no appetite for a war with Iran here. Period. End of story. Bombings, that's okay because Aunt Millie down the street, she could still go to Aldi's and buy her bananas and, go get her latte at Starbucks, and it's not a real thing, So I think that's where the red line is. Once you start talking about young American boys dying over there, that's where they lose everything. And if you watch the U.S. actions, even Afghanistan, we didn't really have that many people there. Like warfare's changing anyways, with the drones in Ukraine. Like Ukraine has all the drones and the Russians have all the drones and its hypersonic missiles and all this. It has very little to do with boots on the ground. So I think you see airstrikes. I think Israel gets involved too, possibly. But I also know that Trump is all about keeping people on the back foot. So he
What do you
talks
think the
wildly
point of the
and then pulls
airstrikes
back.
would be?
What do
I mean,
what do I think the point is?
yeah, I mean, what kind of what is it? Nuclear program? The senior leaders themselves, targeted assassination, or the
I could
repression?
see
I think
them
they're
come-
asking themselves that, Adam, as well.
Yeah,
typically.
yeah. I could see them attacking the leaders. We were talking before the show. They assassinated Soleimani. I think it would be harder to get the leaders, but I'm sure they don't. The problem that we have then is, okay, who takes over? Is it
Yeah.
worse? Because we don't know. And to put this in a North American context, you with my Canadian friend over here, it's kind of like a hockey game. Somebody takes a cheap shot on, one of the Maple Leafs takes a cheap shot on a Canadian player. Well, then the goon from the Canadians comes out and starts fighting the guy from Toronto just to kind of save face. And I think that's what most of this is going to end up being, unfortunately. I wish, and there is a lot of support for the Iranian people here in the US. You wouldn't think that. You would think that from all the propaganda, but I'm
believe that.
I'm 54, and I was like 9 when all of this started with Iran.
Yeah,
And
me
I've
too.
never had an Iranian punch me in the face. I've had a Canadian hockey player punch me in the face. Farm
Sorry
boys
about
from
that.
Alberta, because I played hockey for years. I've had cousins beat me with a wiffle ball bat when we were kids running around in the background, in the backyard acting like heathens. But I've never had a problem with an Iranian. And it's an amazing culture. So, I think most Americans know that. So I think we're in a situation where if we could just do an airdrop of a bunch of materials for the Iranian people to rise up and overthrow the Iranians, we would have done it decades ago.
Yeah.
As far as military, it's one thing to send pilots and drones. It's a whole another situation to escalate it to the point where you have infantry.
The other side of it is, I suspect Trump might look at it this way. Let's just suppose for argument's sake, that the regime in Iran changed tomorrow and you had a government that said, you know what, we're going to be kind of in the middle of the road. We don't have any particular agenda. We'd like to come out of the sanctions. We'd like to build up the country. We've been left behind. And we're going to give our people, it can be a democracy. They can choose what they want to do.
Going to the markets, the first step would be to jump in and buy Halliburton.
Well, what I was thinking more is the flip side. I think you're very right about everything you say. Like, Trump apparently said today, or so it was said of him, he said, if I can do something that's actually going to work and be definitive, I'll do it.
And that's the problem.
If I don't have something to do, then what the hell am I going to open up here? But the other side of that is, I think Trump knows that if Iran came into, I don't know what you might call it, came into the region and the regime there changed, it might end some of the conflicts and suspicion in the region. And it might be that financially, in terms of trade, in terms of, Trump would really like to put together a kind of economic package that binds countries together in the Middle East.
Let's not forget the ego part of this. If Trump could somehow get the Iranians to become a democracy, he would do it because he'd love and the reality is, he would brand it. But the reality is that there have been like 7 or 8 wars stopped since he was president that the U.S. has had their fingers involved in the negotiations. A lot of them are wars people don't even know exist.
No, that's
but
true.
That would be Trump would consider that one of his greatest accomplishments, probably in life, let alone the presidency.
Yeah, that's why I think, if somebody persuaded him that there was like a relatively doable win there, he
would undoubtedly take to Twitter and True Social to tell you how, and losers like Mark Carney, Emmanuel Macron could not get this job done for decades. And us, we did it better than anybody has ever done. It is the greatest peace deal ever. That's exactly what would happen.
At the risk
Yeah.
of sounding mercenary, these are the kind of events that create opportunities in the market, period.
Yeah.
Like, you go back 10, 15 years, you go back decades, you go back a century, you go back to these major conflicts, you go back to things like COVID, you go back to the credit crisis, the financial crisis. These are where you find opportunities in the market, period, whether it's individual stocks, whether it's buying an equity index, whether it's trading off
Shorting the spike in oil.
Yeah. Trading off currency pairs, whether it's something like Brexit, which created massive opportunities in the majors. This is where you should be looking at all your support resistance levels, all your big trends that could be developing or breaking out. This is where you get in the back of it. When the first kind of tariff dip happened, it was retail traders that got in first before the institutions, and were buying individual value stocks like Costco, etc., and really making money off that. This is where traders make money, unfortunately, but it needs events. Some of those events aren't going to be positive, but it creates value in the markets. It creates turnover. It creates a reset of asset classes and what's good and what's not.
So my prediction yesterday was, I think it's going to happen on Friday night, very early, late in the middle of the night when the markets are shut. It's 4:00 in the morning in Iran when people are at their lowest. And then there are 3 days until the markets open in the US.
And it is worth noting that the Trump administration has this weird knack of doing things as far away from the markets as possible.
Yeah, they do a lot of things at the weekends.
This is why when oil spikes after something, my first thought is, where do I short it? Because they won't hit the oil infrastructure because they don't want $90 a barrel oil. They just don't. I mean, it helps the tar sands in Alberta and the shale producers in the Midwest in the United States, but they don't want that because above all else, Trump watches markets.
Yeah. They give a big crap.
So let's
about the
say
market
something
and care
does
about
happen.
It won't be Tuesday, 1:00 in the afternoon in New York.
So let's say something does happen at the weekend.
A non-farm.
What's going to happen when the markets open on Monday morning? Crude oil.
I'm going to just sit there and wait for the oil to slow down and start shorting it. That's what's going to happen.
That's an opportunity.
And I think there will be people, and unfortunately a lot of them are retail traders, that'll just be hammering that button at the open. Buying gold, buying silver, buying oil. And although that might be the right direction eventually, there's going to be like a $7-8 pop in oil, which I'm more than willing to short at the first signs of exhaustion.
By the way, did you notice that silver and gold were going crazy last night until Trump walked it back a bit, and then they plummeted? So it seems to be putting a bit of a premium on gold and silver as well. They may.
Yeah, I don't understand the silver part.
Yeah.
I think that's just
doesn't make a lot of sense, but
yeah, like gold I get, but silver, I think silver was just, I think really honestly what it comes down to is somebody who bought silver at 50 or maybe 12 and it's at 90, they need a reason to get out. That might have been their excuse. Okay, I'll take my profit, because sometimes you need to be convinced to do it. You need an excuse. That's a psychology thing, but there are times where I've taken positions and I don't know if it's right or not, but something happens and I'm like, you know what? I've been up in this for 4 months. I'm up 20%, just take it and run.
So silver, I'm looking at silver or gold. Gold in the last... No,
I would like to point out to the viewers that Adam said before we jumped on, I'm the guy who's not talking about silver today, and the first person to mention silver.
Guess what? I'm in again. I'm in again.
We have it in writing. It's in our WhatsApp thread.
I have made a 4-figure sum from trading silver in the last few months. I won't have any aspersions cast on my silver long position size. It was smaller than usual, yes, but it was only half. So I'm very happy to say I made a bit more than $18.
There you go.
But yeah,
it goes back to my earlier point.
It's nerve-wracking watching silver.
Sorry, Adam, cutting you off.
It's just crazy. It's like, well, it's 93, it's 86. It's it's like pick a random number somewhere between 50 and 100, and silver will probably be trading there at some point in the next couple of days.
The one thing I'd say about silver is it's made. This is my point about making. Can you guys hear me? Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
yeah.
we got you.
Okay. Silver for the last couple of weeks has made a textbook base on the daily chart. It just made like a cup and handle. It's made a really nice base. It just primed for more bullish behavior. It's been like 2 weeks doing that. These are the kinds of chart patterns that help any trader kind of take a position and ride it. And these are the kind of events, unfortunately, that create it.
$100 silver, $120, $150.
I think there's no way that they don't at least attempt $100.
Yeah.
At this point.
And it's not about silver's price. It's about cash being cheap, and there being so much freaking cash and liquidity in the system. It's just print money. That cash goes somewhere ultimately.
So, Huzefa, what if you heard that there had been something happening in Iran over the weekend? What would you be looking to do on Monday, or would you be leaving it alone?
I would look for an unlikely dip in the S&P 500, wait for some supports to be hit, and buy off that. I think when I say unlikely dip, I think the dip would be unlikely. But if it dipped nicely, I'd buy off those S&P 500.
I think there's a lesson here that if you've been in the market for as long as we have, you understand that what you don't do is start pressing buttons at the open.
Yeah.
You have to let things settle. And new traders, I totally get it. You're like, oh my God, oil's going to go to the moon and you want to participate in that trade. But the smart move 99.9% of the time is let things settle for 24 hours.
Yeah.
Even a 3 to 5 days sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. But like at least 24 hours, you have a situation where the markets have taken in, the Tomahawk missile strikes on the Iranian and the Republican Guard. Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
And, or whatever. Something like that happens. The markets freak out. And then once they stop freaking out in either direction, generally speaking, they go back to whatever it is they were doing before then. But everybody, and I get it, I've been there. You want that quick, hyper fast money. You think I'm going to miss it. That FOMO is very real when you've been trading for 6 months and that kind of thing happens.
The collapse of FTX, I think, provided one of the best examples of how to trade a market when big things happen. Wait for a big event. FTX collapsed. The market dipped hard. It spent, I think, about 3 weeks settling and made a base, and it produced one of the best buying opportunities in Bitcoin in probably one of the best in its history.
Well, I don't like to talk about Bitcoin because as an analyst, I remember going, well, Bitcoin today hit $2,900, which is ridiculous because, what's it even used for? As I'm sitting there and I probably had enough money to buy 1 or 2 coins in my checking account at the moment. You know what I mean? Like, and now here I am all these years later. I still think it's ridiculous, but I mean, it's a market.
Lesson 1 in trading: divorce reason from the chart.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
That'd be my entire book on trading.
That's a good
Chapter
rule of
1.
thumb.
Well, no, you forgot buy the dip in the S&P.
Yeah.
That would be the second.
Yeah, we went through that last week. Chris, you wanted to talk about some of the economic data that's come out, I think, at the end of last week and also yesterday. Do you want to start with last Friday?
So last Friday, the non-farm payroll announcement came out at adding 50,000 jobs instead of 65,000.
Right.
So the job market is cooling off a little bit in the United States. But quite frankly, I think we're starting to switch to a regime where you're not watching that as much, but you're watching the JOLTS jobs openings because we had been in a situation where the data had dipped previously, but the JOLTS numbers were still elevated. So that's where I'm starting to focus, because there's a real world in which you only add 50,000 jobs, but there might be 1.2 million openings. And why have you only added 50,000 jobs? Maybe you don't have enough workers. that is a problem, I think, for most countries, and the United States is not going to escape that. There's the whole population collapse. That's why everybody's all about immigration and bringing new people in, because you need it for an economy. Now, I think that's just one way to look at it. I think the market is pretty set in its idea of the Federal Reserve cutting rates in February and possibly, I think, June. But um,
I think
the
I think
data.
only June is expected.
Oh, is it only June now?
Yeah. Well, it's
Okay.
June, and then I think like August or September or something.
June and August, so they have pushed it back.
Yeah.
So I think they're still expecting the interest rate cuts, but that's kind of, and I haven't looked for a couple days, but last I heard, I thought it was February, which that's just been the pattern though. The market expects an interest rate cut and then it pushes it back. And then it wants a cut and then it pushes it back. And that's been the pattern because the US economy is so resilient. And I actually, with the leading indicators that I follow, I have the US economy picking up later this year. So I think the market will be disappointed before it's all said and done. And unless, of course, going back to last week, Trump gets his man in there who's willing to cut in the face of anything, which is what he wants.
Polymarket
So
has
I
it
think-
pretty
I think
even
that-
between the two candidates, almost like
Yeah.
neck and neck.
And I think the market is still just flailing around with the interest rate cut. I think the market won't be happy with it, but I also, and Huzefa will probably agree with this, I also have noticed the market will throw a tantrum about it for 10, 15, 20 minutes and then just turn around and go higher anyways.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the weird dichotomy we find ourselves in. Other data like the PPI was flat and it was supposed to be 0.2% month over month.
Yeah, that's good on
and
inflation.
retail
isn't it?
sales was 0.6 and it was supposed to be like 0.2. So Americans will buy anything that's not nailed down. I mean, that's literally the truth. And I granted, I live in a city that's has a large young population because of the university here. But the stores are still packed. That's not changing. And so I think the US economy is better off than many think it is. And I think it's better off, especially than Europe. I have the North America doing better than Europe most of this year.
I think, I totally agree with that. Huzefa, what's your take? I also know you wanted to talk about a stock in particular.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that's happening right now in the S&P 500 is that there seems to be a divergence between the direction of the S&P 500 and NVIDIA in particular. And NVIDIA really has been the driver of the S&P 500 for a good few years. It's the poster child, the bellwether of AI. And if you look at the chart, if you just took NVIDIA by itself, no context, it looks like it's topping out since like August last year. It's where it was in August last year, the stock price. And since then, S&P 500 has gone from like something like 6,500 to on the cusp of 7,000. So there seems to be a reordering of the top players in the S&P 500. If that can happen in an organized fashion where you can see some of these Mag 7 stocks halt their rise and other stocks catch up and it allows some stability to the index, that will be fabulous.
Yeah, that's a good sign. That's a
Yeah.
really good sign.
Yeah. There's, I think, a tremendous opportunity if people want to get down into the weeds and find individual stocks, whether it's on fundamentals, whether it's on low Ps, whether it's on some basic charts. I think there's some stocks in there. You don't even have to get out of the top 100, top 250 S&P 500. We're not talking small cap stocks here. We're talking still large cap revenue generating stocks, but they're there. And I think there are opportunities to be had.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, I think sooner rather than later we break 7,000.
Yeah.
The market clearly doesn't want to fall apart, but
the momentum has slowed lately.
it has slowed. But the fact is, every time something comes out that should send the market down 10%, it falls for a couple hours and then it stabilizes and bounces.
Yeah.
It's the resiliency that's caught my attention, not the momentum. We just need a catalyst. Maybe it's earnings season. I
Yeah.
mean that would be odd if it was an earnings season, because that would imply a somewhat normal market, historically speaking. Like, we would be talking about whether or not companies make money, which is
Yeah.
insane. If to most traders in the last 5 years, you don't pay attention to those things.
The
Yeah.
good sign of long-term normality has been that if you look at 15, 20 years, a chart of Berkshire Hathaway versus the
Mhm.
S&P 500, they've outperformed the S&P 500. So there is still that long-term normality of brick and mortar businesses selling real products and services, outperforming whatever the theme of the year is.
I think, completely off script, and don't worry, I won't go completely off the rails. I see the concern in Adam's eyes. He's like, "Great, we're gonna have to take this. We're gonna have to take this out,
1 hour
in
later,
post."
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think there's a generation of investors, young people. I think of, like, my 20-year-old son, who has his own account, um, who made 30% last year. I'm very proud of him. And he has taken the attitude of, if he doesn't understand it, he doesn't want to own it. Very
Beautiful.
Warren Buffett of him.
Yeah.
So there have been times in the market where he will say things like, "I'm not real sure where things are going right now. I don't like the way things are behaving. Let's either buy a short-term bond, or let's find something that's close to its ex-dividend date, a company that we know is going to be here 10 years from now." I think these young kids have been burnt by so many of the finfluencers. You'll notice none of us pulled up in our Lambo for this podcast, but they've been
How do you
so
know that?
burnt.
How do you know that?
Well, yeah, that's true. But
We might have.
they've been so burnt by some of this nonsense out there, this get rich quick behavior, that I think you're going to see this next generation think about things like, okay, well, maybe I should own a little bit of Coca-Cola in my portfolio, if for only the fact that it's a safety play. It's like a bond. I get paid a dividend. Or like, what is it, Exxon, that's always raised their dividend over the years. It's one of the oil. I can never remember which one it is, but something like that. They will look for exposure. And I think a lot of this, oh, this is the hottest thing, let's buy massive calls in Nvidia next week, or Tesla. I think that's going to go by the wayside, because these kids have been burned. Like Wall Street bets, there's a whole litany of people who have been up $200,000 only to blow their account like weeks later. And I think there's a real fatigue for the nonsense. So I actually think this next generation of investors will probably be more like our parents' generation. What does it do? Is it something I'm going to use? Has it been around? What's the PE ratio? Does it pay a dividend? All the boring questions that make
Yeah.
you money over time.
The chat on forums like Reddit, forums like StockTwits, they're remarkably sober.
Yeah.
They're remarkably
It's a wonderful thing.
reasoned. Yeah. They're looking at what company, they're looking at balance sheets, they're debating P&L statements, they're debating quality of management, market share. It's phenomenal analysis that's going on in retail. It's
Yeah.
akin to institutional.
Yeah.
And there's no information advantage that institutions have anymore. There's no
Not really.
arbitrage. Before, decades ago, institutions were playing off the access and level of information, the level of analysis that they were doing compared to retail. That's gone.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I agree.
You're willing to put the work in is there.
I think this next generation of investors, I have high hopes for the next generation, period, for a whole host of reasons
Yeah.
beyond investing. I really think that we are about to see this next generation coming up. I'm really impressed by these kids. And as a Gen X, that says a lot, because we don't like anybody.
If they can avoid and wash out of the poly market FanDuel type,
Yeah.
what they think of as the mischaracterized as investing, if
Yeah.
they can avoid that route, and roll their sleeves up and get into the.
I think that plays part of it, though. I think the mistakes of betting on
That's a good
random
point.
stuff does, think of all the dumb things you did when you were 20 that have made you a father, and you know how to talk to your kids. I think it's just part of the process, but I have a lot of hope for these kids. One of the things I know we were talking about um, um, today was like how we trade. That's kind of the same topic. If you think about it, we don't try to go for flashy. I think over time you learn that the gains that you can make doing a YOLO call on Tesla, they're great. Of course, you get excited when you make $1,900 out of thin air. But the reality is that's not a day-to-day thing. The day-to-day thing is I'm up 0.4% today and I'm ecstatic about it because that's a solid performance, professional performance. And I think that is I think the misinformation of what the reality of trading is has caused an insane amount of damage. These 50% returns in 2 weeks. You can't keep that up because eventually not only do you have a lot of money, you have all the money. And that doesn't mathematically make sense. But there are people out there. I get that all the time. Hey, if you can provide me signals, how many signals a day can you provide me? And then my response is, can you tell me what the market's going to do ahead of time? Because that's what it would take, that kind of thing. I get analysis wrong all the time, but it's about mitigating the losses. It's making the losses small.
Trading isn't about getting a result. It's about following a process. That's what trading is. It should be.
That is true. That is true.
Also, I would point out in the how you should or how we would trade. I did want to point out that right now there's some. I've been watching the exotics, the Mexican peso and the South African rand specifically. Mexico, you have oil, which is perking up a bit, but the interest rate differential you could drive a truck through between the U.S. dollar and the Mexican peso. And I think a lot of our viewers probably don't know Mexico is the largest, I believe, or it always goes back and forth between China and Mexico, exporter to the U.S. So the better the U.S. does, the Mexican peso moves in correlation to the U.S. economy because so many goods come up. We need so many Mexican. It's not just avocados. It's GM. It's alcohol. It's just manufactured products in places like Juarez jumping back across the border. So I like Dollar Mex. Dollar Mex it's just been in a grinding downtrend, but you get paid being short. South African rand, same thing. Hard commodities, South Africa with gold and diamonds and everything else that they have. The interest rate differential, to me, it looks like the carry trade's very alive. You can see it in the Japanese yen. But some of these other currencies, I constantly get email and messages. Hey, what do you think about the yen? Well, short the yen. But there are other opportunities that people are missing. Like
Chris,
a beautiful
what's your spread like on the Mexican peso trade? Like if you wanted to hold a position for 3-5 days, can you do it with the spread?
Yeah. Yes. But that's the other thing too. With an exotic, you don't go in with a full lot. It is, for me, this is how I trade it. I short the dollar against Mexican peso, have been for months, but a small position, and I just collect at the end of every day. I think of it as like a daily dividend
And daily interest account.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a ton of my account right now. It's, I don't know, about 5%. But over 3 or 4 months, you can take a look at the chart. You can see exactly why I'm there. It's boring. It's not exciting. It's not something I have to think about every day. It can turn around in a huge risk off position, but right now, to me, it's very obvious that the carry trade is still alive if you look around.
I would totally agree with that. I was actually a few weeks ago was kind of out of the market, and I thought, you know what, I want to. And usually I buy U.S. Treasury bills because I get slightly better tax treatment on them, with like 3 months to maturity, and I pay a lower rate. And then I thought, you know what, peso's so strong. Can I get my hands on some Mexican treasury bills that are going to be paying me 7% compared to the 4%? And you know what? I couldn't do it. I have a very capable broker.
Yes, I
Couldn't
know.
get.
We talked about your
Yeah.
broker, and that
I
specific broker, if anybody can do it, it would be them.
Yeah,
And
they
if
can't
you
do
can't
it.
do it there.
You have to have a Mexican bank account, as far as I know, and you've got to,
That
buy
didn't
them.
used to be the case, but I think that is fallout from the old tequila crisis, which is what they called the bond problem in Mexico, and we're going back 20 years. But it used to be that you could buy them, but there was some type of bond issue. Um, I want to say about 15, 20 years ago in Latin America. And they called it, it was nicknamed the tequila crisis. And I think things changed after that. But you can always open up a Mexican bank account and then solve your problem. I'm sure you can do it online these days.
That's true. I am, talking about how I trade. I'm most interested in major stock market indices and commodities on the long side. I feel like these tend to provide the best returns you get anywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to buy breakouts on the long side of these, and I just use a trailing stop. And I'll use my own judgment. I might skip a trade, or I might use a small position size like I did lately on silver. But people are a bit surprised. I mean, that sounds like kind of quite dull. Like I could almost automate it. But I find that in the balance of everything else I do in my life, it works for me. And I would say that, you could try so many different things. And there are mornings where I wake up and I think, you know what, I want to trade totally differently. I want to be looking at strange coins you never heard of and getting on a crypto exchange, and sometimes I have these mad impulses that I don't usually follow through on. But I'm sure, like, probably as a trader, you get a bit bored, even when you've been doing it for a long time, and you sometimes think, when I get into that, fear of missing out.
Trading should be boring.
Yeah, exactly. Trading should be boring.
Should be boring.
You can't help it. You hear about somebody else, you read something, and you think, oh, that's an interesting. Like, why didn't I try that?
Here's my take on it. To the young men in the audience, when you're at a party and you're talking to the beautiful girl and you're discussing how, I'm short the Russian ruble and I buy the euro and blah blah, and she has that glazed look over her eyes of absolute boredom as she no longer is interested in you. Yes, that's what normal people think about these things, and that's how you should feel. That glazed look of indifference. Here's a boring one that I find interesting all of a sudden. CAC 40 in Paris, the index just broke out. It's retesting that massive barrier right around, off the top of my head, I want to say around 8,200 or so. That's a chart I looked at today. I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that's exotic enough. I mean, the CAC 40 is not, it's a sizable index. It's not something that as an American I would trade all the time. But you don't have to go out to, whatever random crypto coin to get excitement.
Well,
it's
you can do it. Index of real companies in a regulated market, and that's all you need. You've got the.
What about you, Huzefa? What's your? I want to kind of wrap things up a bit, but I'd like you to share with us a little bit about the main method that you use to look for what to trade. And
yeah, I appreciate that. I am as close to being, and this term is often used as a pejorative, I'm proud to hang my hat on it, a classical technical analysis as you can get. Like, we're talking old school John J. Murphy's 1980s book, Technical Analysis of the Financial Markets, Trends, Chart Patterns.
Pen in the jacket pocket.
Freaking, I would do it all.
Clipboard. Yeah.
My pen case, man. It's like my notepad. I got my ruler. I print stuff out. I draw lines with pencils. The whole shebang, man. Chris talking about the carry trade being alive. I think one of the things that's still alive in all liquid markets is long-term support and resistance levels.
Yeah.
Chart patterns when major trends reverse. They will still be there because they're tied to human psychology. and ultimately humans will be trading
especially
them.
on the higher time frames,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
your weekly charts and things
Yeah.
like that.
Look at the, I mean, if you want a boring currency is the dollar Swiss, and look at the gorgeous support it's
Basing
made.
pattern. Oh my God, is it doing everything it can to find its floor forever? But in
Yeah.
the meantime, you can range trade it with that positive swap, which is what I've been doing for 6 months. I love that pair.
I'm almost finished this book. I'll talk a little bit more about it in another episode, but it's Gary Stevenson's a highly successful British investment banker trader for one of Europe's largest investment banks. He put in he's an old school macro trader, but once he decided his position, once he'd got his point of view, put his trade on, he was so bored he would fall asleep at his desk. That's how boring he made making millions of dollars a year. And
Well,
that's,
let's hope we all get similarly bored.
Yeah.
What can I
this
say?
is the most exciting thing I'm going to do today, guys.
Bore your way
This is
to
my
the
coffee.
million. Yeah, that could be the book title that we've all been searching for. So that kind of wraps things up for today. That was episode 13 of Pairs of Aces. We're looking forward to seeing you next week. I don't know what we'll be covering, but we will be covering something. And it'll be interesting to see what happens over the coming days. You can please do subscribe. You won't miss anything that way. You'll get all the episodes and everything else, the other analysis we do. And leave a question or a comment in the comment section. And if you have a question, we will answer it next week. Huzefa, Chris, thank you very much as always.
Thank you,
It's been a
guys.
pleasure. And it's goodbye from us, and we hope to see you next week at Pairs of Aces. Bye-bye.
Thanks, mate.